What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back inside the UC Health Training Center for today's edition of Broncos Now. Team reporter and host Sydney Jones here. And coming up on today's episode, we'll hear from head coach Nathaniel Hackett and take a look at this week's final injury report. Plus, Broncos lead writer Aric DiLalla joins the show for a game preview. All that and more coming up. The Broncos hit the road to head to Los Angeles tomorrow. The Broncos are set to face the Chargers at SoFi Stadium in prime time on Monday night. Head coach Nathaniel Hackett spoke to the media for the final time today ahead of Monday night's game and gave an update on Russell Wilson's shoulder.
Oh, he's great. He's doing great. He threw the ball really well today. I think that the good thing about Russ is even when it feels good, he's still going to keep working on it. You know, his whole body. It's everything. He knows that it's hard to get through an entire season without nicks and bruises and different things happening. So he's a constant pro when it comes to keeping his body right.
Coach Hackett went on to discuss how the team will look to find a balance between being aggressive on offense while not putting too much pressure on Russell's shoulder.
I think that's kind of one of those things. It's a fine line. You want to be sure that we're continually gaining and getting better every day, but you want to make sure you're taking care of him, his body, but you want to get them all into a rhythm. So we try to do it as well as we can from how many throws he takes and everything, but up to this week, he was pretty unlimited.
And now let's take a look at this week's final injury report. The Broncos will be without inside linebacker Josey Jewell and safety Caden Stearns Monday night as Coach Hackett ruled them out today. Guard Dalton Reisner, tight end Eric Saubert, running back Melvin Gordon, offensive lineman Billy Turner, cornerback Damari Mathis, outside linebacker Jonathan Cooper, and guard and center Quinn Miners were listed as questionable. Coach Hackett does believe that Justin Simmons will play on Monday. Now joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio is Broncos lead writer Aric DiLalla for a game preview. Aric, just one more day now until we hit the road to head to Los Angeles. How you feeling?
I'm cautiously optimistic, Sydney. I think the Broncos have gotten some time off here that they desperately needed. They need this game. We've heard all week guys talk about this is a must-win. Justin Simmons, of course, said that the other day. I'm cautiously optimistic about what could happen on Monday against the Chargers.
Aric, we just looked at the final injury report heading into Monday night. Are you concerned with some of the guys who are listed as questionable heading into this game?
Yeah, you know what, we'll have to see. I think Quinn Miners being a full participant on Saturday was a really good sign. He's listed as questionable, but to me that suggests maybe he's going to be able to go. And throughout the season, the Broncos have listed guys as questionable, and typically that means 50-50, but we've seen Nathaniel Hackett be a little cautious with guys in terms of how he's worked them into practice. So just because there's a lot of guys that are listed as questionable doesn't mean that, half those guys aren't going to play. The Broncos obviously are going to be okay without Caden Stearns, I think, who is ruled out. He's been playing really well, but expect to get Justin Simmons back. So that's a really good replacement there for Caden. Mm-hmm. And I think Alex Singleton played well in place of Josey Jewell, who is ruled out as well. So the questionable guys, we'll see if Billy Turner plays and kind of what his role will be. Melvin Gordon, of course, it sounds like, based on what we've seen the last few weeks, I would expect him to play. Dalton Reisner comes back to practice on Saturday. I'd hope he's able to play as well. So I think the Broncos are going to be okay there. I know fans look at the injury report sometimes and think, man, that thing's pretty long.
Yeah.
But I think the Broncos are going to be okay and have most of those guys against the Chargers.
Well, we heard from Coach Hackett earlier in the show. He gave an update on Russell Wilson's shoulder, said he's feeling great, threw the ball really well at practice today. Overall, really positive news there. As we expected, he will have no limitations really Monday night. Aric, for you, kind of what are your expectations as a whole for this offense on Monday?
Yeah, I think that part of the reason, let me put it this way, people are giving Russ a hard time, nationally and saying, hey, he doesn't look the same that he's looked. He's had one not-so-good game, and that came against the Colts. He was great in the first half against the Raiders, and then the Broncos didn't have very many plays in the second half, but he almost led them back. He was great in Seattle, I thought, almost 350 yards. So Russ, I'm not concerned about. I expect him to bounce back, and I think with the benefit of this 10-day break, we're going to see the Broncos be able to evaluate what they do on offense. I'd expect better efficiency. You've had a lot of time to tailor a game plan for the Chargers. So I'd expect them to take a step forward. Now, you still got to go out there and execute regardless of what the plan is, regardless of how healthy you are. You've got to find a way to go out there, and when you have red zone opportunities, take advantage of them. But I've talked again and again about how this is not an offense that is just awful and does nothing well, they do hit these big plays a lot, and they do have red zone chances. Right. They've just got to find a way to be more consistent and capitalize on them. Mm-hmm. And you'd expect that at some point to kind of even out, get back to, regress toward the mean. Broncos have just had some bad luck, I think, in some of these cases. So they've got to execute better, but I do think that this weekend we could see a much more efficient Broncos offense than we have.
Coach Hackett said today during his press conference that he tries to find this balance for this week or for Monday night, with being, aggressive still on offense, but not going, too hard or too rough when regarding Russell's shoulder. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think you want to be a little bit, you don't want to throw the ball down the field, 40 times, obviously. But I don't know that that's a Russell injury-related deal. I mean, that's just how this offense is supposed to be built. You're supposed to run the football. You're supposed to have play-action passes. Right. You're supposed to take those shots occasionally to, take advantage of the defense playing up. But this offense is not meant to be, a run-and-gun, 50 throws a game type system. So to me, it's unrelated. Maybe it helps Russ's shoulder, but it's kind of unrelated to the shoulder, just in general. It's more about what is your offensive philosophy, what works well. Gotcha. And in terms of, these third and longs, if you can get a quick pass, get 5 yards on first down, run it on second down and get a few more yards so that you face these 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 2s instead of 3rd and 12s, that's what's going to give you success. And so that's also an area where you have to balance, hey, we want to take a shot down the field to Cortland Sutton on 1st and 10, but is it the right time, or do we want to get a few yards on first down and then try that on 2nd and 4? And so that's something that Nathaniel Hackett's going to have to figure out. The Broncos as a whole in offense will have to figure out, and that'll be a developing kind of process throughout the year.
Eric, looking at the offensive line, who do you think will really step up in Garrett Bowles' place, at left tackle? And, we mentioned some of those guys who are questionable. Dalton Reisner, Quinn Miners. Maybe we see Billy Turner step up this week. How do you see the offensive line really playing out this week?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of things up in the air, the way that the injuries, have taken a toll on this offensive line. Mm-hmm. I would guess that you'll see Quinn Miners and Dalton Reisner both play on Monday night. Sounds like things are trending that way for Quinn, who's a full participant, as I mentioned. Dalton, if things don't go backwards, you hope he's able to play on Monday. So I think they'd play at guard, and then at tackle, it's just what do they feel most comfortable with? Because really, you could do almost any combination. You could have Calvin Anderson at left and Cam Fleming at right. You could have Billy Turner at right and Cam Fleming at left. You could have Calvin Anderson and Bill. I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities here, a lot of different patterns that you could go with. We're just going to see kind of what the Broncos are going to prioritize. Is it pass protection? Is it run blocking? Is it making sure you've had a guy in there who's played some football this year? Do you want to go to Billy Turner, who has not played a snap so far this season? I don't really have a great sense of how that's going to play out, but you would hope at some point, I think, that you get to see what Billy Turner can do. I mean, you signed him here, obviously. You brought him in for a reason. Yeah. I would think at some point they would want to see what he can do, but you've also got to find a way to win this football game, and so whatever's best for the team Monday is what you have to do.
Where the Chargers offense, they rank 2nd in the league in passing yards per game. This Denver defense allows the least amount of passing yards in the league per game. How do you think this defense will really hold up going against Justin Herbert and company, who's been pretty dominant last couple games?
Yeah, he's been hurt a little bit. He looks like he's close to kind of pre-injury Justin Herbert. I do think if you're the Broncos, you still want to get pressure on him. You want to make things difficult. Bradley Chubb's obviously had a really strong start to this season. Can he find a way to make Justin Herbert uncomfortable? I don't think the Chargers are going to be afraid to go after a guy like Pat Surtain. We saw last year they took their chances against Surtain, especially in Denver. Surtain essentially baited Herbert into a pick for his first interception of that game. Just a really impressive play. I don't think they're going to be afraid to go after him again. And so I would think, the Broncos have traveled Surtain a couple times this year. Maybe Surtain sticks with a Mike Williams, who is a big-bodied receiver, has a big catch radius, can make really impressive plays. That would be a fun matchup to watch. Yeah. And if Keenan Allen doesn't go, he's listed as doubtful to play in this game. That would help the Broncos because, listen, I think Damari Mathis and Michael Ojemudia, if he's activated, they're both up to that challenge. Yeah. But I also think it's, if Damari Mathis can ease into that starting role with Ronald Darby out for the season, that's more helpful than if you get thrown in kind of head first and have to try to stop Keenan Allen or Mike Williams. That becomes a lot more difficult.
For sure. You mentioned the Mike Williams, Pat Surtain matchup. Is that the matchup to watch, you think, this game, or what do you think?
Yeah, it probably is. The Broncos offense obviously needs to find a way to have success against Khalil Mack. I mean, that's another one to watch. Khalil Mack versus whoever starts at right tackle, left tackle. They'll move him around, I'm sure, without Joey Bosa available. Derwin James at safety, he's all over the field. He's always a guy that you've got to watch out for. But in terms of that one-on-one matchup, they're going to go to Mike Williams. They're going to take their shots down the field. They're going to try to throw it to him in the end zone. If Pat Surtain can play the way he did against Davante Adams, the Broncos are going to have a lot of success. He's going to need to kind of rise to that occasion. And listen, that's just expectations are high for Pat this year. And so that's what that means. Every week you might face the top receiver for another team. You're going to be tested. You might give up a catch here and there, but can you prevent the big plays down the field? I mean, I think back to this past Monday night, Chiefs-Raiders.
Right.
Raiders threw the ball down the field to Davante again and again, and you saw the impact that had. Mm-hmm. Well, Pat Surtain stopped him from doing that when the Broncos played the Raiders. So if Surtain can have a similar impact against Mike Williams, it's going to go a really long way toward kind of thwarting this Chargers offensive attack, and it'll give the Broncos a good chance to win.
Definitely be another tough matchup in the AFC West. Aric, like you mentioned earlier, Justin Simmons said it, must-win game here for the Broncos. So last question for you. What's your game prediction?
Yeah,
feeling?
I do think the Broncos find a way to get this done. They've played, in terms of the AFC West, they've not been very good. I believe 9 out of 10 they've lost against division opponents. But they've had some success against the Chargers. They've had some success a little bit against Justin Herbert. The Broncos, despite these guys who are questionable, I think are healthier than they've been in a while. They've had a lot of time off. I think they're motivated. They know it's at stake. And I think Russell, he mentioned I'm not motivated by criticism. But I do think there's probably a degree where he wants to go out and prove, that he and the offense are not going to look like this all season. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Broncos take a step forward there, play the same type of defense. Shutting down Austin Eckler is important. And I think the Broncos come out of there with a 27-24 win. 27-24.
I like it. All right. Well, Aric, appreciate your insight. A lot to watch for on Monday night. I will see you in Los Angeles.
You got it, Sid.
Well, that'll do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in today and every day. I hope you'll meet me right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube on Tuesday following the game. I'll see you all then.